In the darkest blackness of human carnage and suffering, police, fire, and EMS intercede on behalf of mankind. God himself reaches out to those who suffer through their hands. Their service is a clear and unmistakable demonstration that God does not abandon people in the storms of life.
Because of that connection, because of what I had learned in sitting in a pew and listening, and then reading in the Word, made that call go so well. In spite of, I knew that my assignment was wrong, that I had been given. Me and a lieutenant had been given an assignment to go to the basement. I knew it was wrong. We went down there because that's what we're supposed to do. I mean, I'm very staunch on that. When you've been given a command, you carry it out. And when you can no longer carry it out, you have to radio back. And I can remember the lieutenant had the thermal imager. I said, we're going upstairs. And then he didn't question it. It was within his right to question me on that. At that point, I was the assistant chief. He was the lieutenant, but it had been within his right to question it because, hey, we were given an order. And I brought him up, and normally you start at the door that you entered and go either one way or the other through policy. And I took him right to the back corner of that first floor. And I said, put your thermal up there and start going within 5 feet of the thermal indicated where the fire was. We took a pike pole and put the fire out. It was, but it was all leading. It wasn't anything that we'd ever been trained. And there's so much more to that story, but I don't want to get off too far off of that with that. But when you talk about anointing, and maybe people don't understand that, to think maybe only the pastor gets that anointing, gets that leading. But once you learn of who you are in Christ, that's the difference maker. You know, it's not religion. Mm. It's relationship.
It's trust.
Pardon?
It's trust.
Yeah, because of the
Trust
relationship
in,
that you have. You can trust him and see, we don't talk about these things because, well, we can't really talk about these things. Well, who said that? Mm-hmm. Well, some legislation or, the Supreme Court. And it's like, the Supreme Court made some very bad decisions as it pertains to the separation of church and state. Separating church and state doesn't mean separating God from service. That's not what that means. We're not promoting a brand of religion and one church over another. We're simply saying you need to have a personal faith. That anointing is an ability that you get. It's a supernatural ability that's from out of this world. And it will help you. And a lot of times people refer to that as, well, my gut. I followed my gut. I had an instinct. I was led to go to the trunk of this car. That's where I found the people locked in there. There's so many variables and so many different versions of language and so forth. Whatever you want to call it, there is an advantage. And whether you like it or not, if you're wearing the uniform and performing the job, God's going to be in that with you. Whether you like it or not, he's going to lead you. He's going to go, psst. He's going to whisper in your ear. He's going to orchestrate things honestly, there are times when I'm sure you could probably say, wow, I almost bought it on that one. I don't know how I got out of there alive.
Which one you want to talk about?
Yeah. I know. I was just thinking that that's a dangerous place to go for us because that I know personally that I've been there several times and thought, okay, I'm done. Mm-hmm. This is it. I'm not getting out of this.
It doesn't even have to be a fire.
No.
It could be an ambulance call. It could be anything, directing traffic. Why were you there? Why? I can think of an ambulance call pretty vividly that by our logic, we should have left. But we didn't. We stood right there and the right things came out of our mouths to diffuse a really, really volatile situation. And the guy walked willingly to the ambulance where he was on a road to either going in a squad car with handcuffs or worse, but walked side by side right out to the ambulance, climbed in on his own power, and the whole thing changed because of that. It was not going a good direction. Matter of fact, the comment was, I'm going to shoot you with his gun and take yours and shoot that one. I think it's time to leave. But
Yeah, that leading, and you can call it miraculous. We've got so many names, gut feeling, etc. But the reality of it is, you are called to this job. Mm-hmm. If you're not called to this job of being either a law enforcement or firefighter, chaplain, EMS, paramedic, whatever, it's not going to go well for you.
Yeah.
Heeding that call is everything, and recognizing what we haven't been taught is how really that you can tap into that faith and that power that's already in you.
But they don't teach that, because it goes back to that fear of, well, we don't want to
liability.
We don't want to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
We don't want to, and it's like.
But again, the reality of it, our founding fathers founded this country on not religion, Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the whole reason we came over here.
I think so, if I understood history right.
And then that's what they were fighting for.
Yeah.
And Washington recognized that. Some of those early leaders all recognized that this Constitution that we have will only work when Christians are in office.
Yeah.
And they had it set up that way. But then, like you say, some bad decisions were made.
Yeah.
Benjamin Franklin,
Benjamin Franklin,
that had the separation of church and state, has been misconstrued, has been mistaught. So is creation, evolution. They've debunked evolution so many times. I don't know why they're still teaching it. You can't even call it a theory anymore. It's been disproven, but it's still out there.
Still out there.
But that's what this country was created on. That's what our Constitution, and they said, when we don't have Christian leadership, this Constitution will no longer work.
Yeah. So how does this all fit into our subject here? I mean, we're talking about first responder suicides, and we're talking about the faith component now and having a personal faith. And I liken it to this. As a chaplain, I think it's easy to understand that ultimately I represent who? God. I represent faith. I represent all of that stuff. So when I am working with other chaplains, or I am on scene with another chaplain, and I know what I'm sensing and feeling is that I'm standing next to a chaplain who doesn't represent God, but they represent a system, because they don't even know God. They don't even really believe in God. So why do I want to work with this person? And the answer is I don't. Because it makes me look bad. And it just destroys, the integrity of my office and what I do. I work hard to protect the integrity of what I do. I work very hard not to betray a confidence. I work very hard to keep it real. That I'm not here for accolades. I'm not here for you to be like, oh, look, well, he's something. I'm nothing. I am absolutely nothing. I am just a shell who is here to do God's work. And I'm only doing it because he allows me to do it. So a first responder who is not representing God but a system, well, that could put you at a disadvantage. And certainly in the case of suicide, if you're at greater risk for suicide because you've recently lost your identity through retirement and you have nothing else to look forward to, well, the faith component will give you a new purpose. It will keep you focused on, I do have a job to do. I do have value.
You do have an identity.
I do have an identity. You know what? I was privileged to be law enforcement for 36 years in the case of this gentleman. Privileged to do that. My grandfather, nearly 50 years of service, and he had to retire due to an injury that was sustained when he got kicked down a flight of stairs. He was 72. Whether or not he should have still been on the job is irrelevant. He could still do the job, but when you get kicked down a flight of stairs, he just could not recover like he used to. Time to retire. And guess what? He was a family man and a man of faith. And I always remember him saying, I like being home. I like being with my family. And I would never have known just by knowing my grandfather in that role, I would never have known that he was a BA cop on the street. I mean, the stories that I have heard, and people have, I was even told by one who knew him. He said, "I know he's your grandfather, and I know you love him, but he was a BA. He was bad, and he busted a few skulls, and a few people met the hood of the car, and it's just different things that he had to do to get there. But you would never know that." By the way, what does BA stand for? Well, I can't swear on camera like this, but a bad attitude. No. I really...
He was a bad butt.
He was, yeah. And so for those, it's hard enough to deal with life when you do have faith. But now, how do you navigate some of these things without any faith? I mean, so my faith tells me that I have purpose, that my identity is not based in my performance. I don't have to wear a uniform to be important. I don't have to carry a gun or a badge to be valued. And, maybe that's someplace for first responders to check up on themselves. What happens to me if I no longer have a uniform to put on? What happens when I sign off the air for the last time? What happens when they throw me a retirement party? What happens if I'm forced out? Because that could very well conceivably happen. You could be forced out. What happens if I'm betrayed by my admin? What happens? Just the list goes on and on. We were jokingly talking about, my father-in-law was talking to me about when he was working for a organized crime and drug unit. And so he happened to make a big arrest, but his superior for that night, for that shift, told him, "Don't do anything. I don't want any paperwork. I don't want anything to happen. I just don't want to be bothered. So don't do anything." Well, he makes a big arrest, and a pretty big deal, only to be punished later by his superior, who put him in some obscure post that didn't even exist. And he had to stand out there in the middle of nowhere because and obviously, well, what are you doing out here? This isn't even a post. Why are you here? Oh, I ticked off so-and-so because I made an arrest and I was told not to do anything. That's the reality. Those are the stressors. Those are the things that are weighing heavy on first responders.
Yeah, the organizational stress that it's been termed, if you will, is exactly that. And there's so many departments, there's so many firefighters that are abused with that.
Right.
By their officers. Some of the officers are abused by their admins because of that.
So how do you overcome that? Now, if you are a person of faith, I know what I do. I mean, I've been betrayed. I've been lied to. I've been cheated on. I've had things stolen from me. I've had people leave inexplicably, without any, people don't even say goodbye. Our studio engineer is gone. He moved on to greener pastures, never even said goodbye. How do you deal with that? Well, you know what? You release people. You just let it go, and you say, okay, bless you. And you know what? I still have a mission. I still have a purpose. And I have a vision from God. And that vision will keep me going when nobody else is looking, when no one else cares, and when no one else says thank you. I know who I am and what I'm here to do. And believe me, there are times when I get up in my pulpit and I go to minister the word or preach the word, and it's like I'm pushing a rope. It's like nobody wants to hear what I have to say. And I'm like, why did you bother coming to church? Why am I even up here? Well, you can overcome that by defaulting back to your knowledge, and you are squarely established in the fact that I am here by divine appointment and design, and nothing and no one is going to change that and take that away from me. And I've said this when the chaplains in our community, we had an atheist organization. I'm just going to go on record and tell you, might as well. We're talking honest here. We got time. We had an atheist organization. I say atheist organization. They were operating under the guise of freedom from religion. Now, I don't know if we should even say it out here in the public, but why not? So they decided that my role as a chaplain in our community was violating constitutional rights, that I was a violation. And I'm not really sure what their reasons were. I was using an official government publication to promote my faith. Basically, what had happened was I was honoring and esteeming the role of first responder, and I was likening your role to that of mine, as I am a minister of the gospel. Yours is a minister of saving lives and defending property. And so what I did do is I just exalted and elevated your role to be up here with mine as a clergy. Boy, I'm making all kinds of noise here. As clergy, and evidently, somehow, now get this now, 2 hours from our community, somehow they got wind of what I wrote in a fire department newsletter. And then they decided, oh, well, he can't do that. So they started sending hate mail to our city, our police department, our fire department. And I was called into the office, and we had to pass the buck a little bit. Well, he's not my problem, he's your problem, so you deal with it. And I'm so thankful that our fire department, specifically, because it ended up in their court, they basically just said, well, we're going to just ignore these ridiculous accusations and these threatening letters. And eventually that group just stopped pursuing us. Well, at that point, I was prepared for our police and fire to say, hey, listen, Gar, we're grateful for the years that you gave us, but now you're causing us some issues here and embarrassment. So, we don't need a lawsuit because the attorney from that group is threatening us. I was prepared for them to say, thank you, but please turn in your badge and thank you. And you know what I said? I said, I am still going to be who I am, a man of compassion. I will still reach into the darkness to ease pain and suffering, whether I wear a badge that says Ogle County Sheriff, Byron Police, Byron Fire, doesn't matter to me. I am still who I am. And you can't change that. You can't take that away from me. And this is when I talk about the faith component, I'm talking about you being convinced that no matter what, you can't change who I am and what I do. I may not do it wearing this. I may not show up and be in an official capacity, but I will be a man of compassion nonetheless, and I will be there for people in my community. And, of course, I was very happy when those threatening letters stopped. But it was interesting that Chief, before you, was after you, he tried to arrange a meeting with one of the sour pants in the community who was really raising Cain over it. And he said, well, why don't you come in and talk to the chaplain, and he'll explain why he wrote what he did and why he said what he said. It's like, how sad is that I try to honor you and put you up on a level, on a pedestal, really, to say, you guys are servants and ministers with me. I minister the gospel, you minister to save lives and protect property. I thought that was really cool, but they didn't think so. Now think about that. That came from a group that calls themselves Freedom from Religion. Really nothing more than an atheist group, just barking at, wherever they can get a rise out of people. And it's like, those are the ones that were protesting any religious symbols on courthouse property and, all that nonsense.
When in reality, all of the symbolization that we have in the fire service, EMS, and law enforcement all have a religious background.
Exactly.
Through God.
Yeah.
It's the Star of Life, the Maltese Cross.
That's right. That's right.
The 7 points.
7-point badge here.
Right.
Star.
Yeah, they all represent God.
Yeah.
And so it's, but it was really heartwarming, and all of that was all of the huge supporters that came to the table and said, hey, if you get any more of this, call us. We'll be glad to help you. From
Chicago Fire. That blessed me so much. Bobby Halton himself. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is when you feel alone and isolated, it hurts. But I wasn't giving up. And I knew that if nobody stood with me, if I got, and really it was conveyed and communicated very clearly that if you have to go to court, we will be there to support you. Chicago Fire Department. I'm like, well, bring it then. I got the muscle behind me. And it's interesting that that organization and that group doesn't go after Chicago Fire or FDNY or NYPD or CPD. They go after the smaller departments who, well, they really can't afford to have bad publicity and a large litigation bill. So the faith component, it basically says this in my mind: I represent God. It doesn't matter who believes in me or not. I know who I represent. I'm not representing a system. Systems will fail. Systems will change. I mean, the social climate will change. Heck, religions, politicians and religious leaders, they'll all come and go. I mean, there's how many popes have there been? 100 and I forget how many there have been. But you know what? You change popes. You change religious leaders. Pastors come and go. Politicians come and go. But my call and who I represent will never change through all these years. And truthfully, I've served under 6 fire chiefs at Byron Fire, and I don't remember how many sheriffs now. Let's see, one. There's been several sheriffs
4
now.
at least.
Yeah. The one we got now, he's a pretty good dude.
I don't know that I've ever met such a humble sheriff, to be honest with you. In all the ones that I've run into, it's awesome to see that whole administration.
It has been a pleasure and a joy, and they didn't pay me to say this, but it is obvious that this administration is serious about providing or making resources available for employee health.
They care about their employees. That's very obvious.
It's like a family. I'm going to be honest with you that the feeling you have is that they take this is like a family, and it's like, I liken it to a church where our sheriff is the pastor, and then his wife would be deputy pastor, co-pastor, and they're in charge of their flock. It is amazing. And you lose some of that with the larger departments. I want to say something here that probably a little known fact about my grandfather. And as I said, he did an amazing job. They did an amazing job making us feel safe and secure. So they shielded us, and we knew their place was acceptance, love, no criticism, no judgment. Well, that's the way it is at our sheriff's office. It's like, I don't know, there's just this feeling that you get. It's like you're a part of the family, just do your thing, be who you be. But with my grandfather, you may wonder, he was uniform patrol for all of his career, almost 50 years. And I asked the question, why did Granddad not take the test? First of all, start with sergeant and then work his way on up. And I got the answer. And I wasn't able to handle it because I couldn't understand it. But the first thing, I always remember him saying that he needed to be with the people that he protected. And I don't know, this post he had, maybe one post he probably had for 35 years, which was a busy downtown shopping district. I loved going down there and walk with him on his beat. He had to go to the old call boxes to call in, and anytime the fire department was whizzing up the hill to when they cleared out the central station and all the apparatus had to go up to the city hospital, Granddad blowing his whistle, get cars to stop and make way for all and the tillerman bouncing in the back, and it's just really cool to watch these guys maneuver through traffic. But I found out that the corruption in that city was so out of control back in that time that I'll do this for you, but you're going to owe me. And Granddad was like, no, you ain't doing nothing for me. I'm going to mind my own business, walk my beat. Him and his partner, Louis D. That was their mindset. Well, fine, leave us alone. We're just going to walk our post, do our job, leave us alone. Don't do nothing for me. I don't care, because it was so corrupt that, you might be number 3 on the list for promotion. It's like, well, how much is it worth? I'll get you right into the number 1 spot. Stuff like that. The corruption was so bad, and Granddad didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I always knew that he always said that, talked about the politics, that he always said, I don't want to get involved in the politics of it. I didn't know what that meant as a kid, but I sure do now. And I wondered if politics is a reason why we really can't pressed through this. We've reached this plateau where, okay, this is good, guys. We've got programs in place. We've got a department chaplain. We've got this, we've got that, but don't push that other stuff. I wonder if politics might have something to do, for some people. I'm not talking about here. I mean, I am very blessed and very fortunate to be a part of what's going on here. But I know other departments where, you would ruin your chances for promotion. You would be blackballed, and chaplains themselves have to abide by the rules. It's like, well, when your life is on the line, when it's life or death, there's only one rule I'm going to follow. And that's the rule of the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus. I'm going to listen to the Spirit of God on how to help you. And if I have to get in your face and tell you, thus saith the Lord, you better knock this off. I mean, I've had people come up to me and confess things and tell me things. And it's like, dude, you need to stop. You're not God's gift to women. And just because you wear the uniform doesn't mean you have a free ticket to sleep in everybody's bed. That's wrong. And then you wonder why you're a jacked up mess. I mean, I'll tell people the truth. Well, you can't talk that way to us. Well, I'm your chaplain. You're darn right I'm going to talk that way to you if I'm going to help you. Mm-hmm. Stop messing around. Stop doing what you're doing. It isn't right. And you know what? I mean, whatever it takes to be real, I think the bottom line is people will respect and respond to that, and they'll call you, like in the case of this law enforcement official. I only wish that things could have worked out different for them, for that department, for that family. Think about this. Do you want to go through the pain and the suffering and the shame and the embarrassment of having a line of duty suicide in your department? I don't want to have to go through that. Line of duty death is bad enough. But now if it's a line of death suicide, maybe that's a new term we ought to come up with. A line of duty suicide.